Welcome to We Are Not Here to Tick a Box with David Kane and Debbie Hayes. Episode 4, Self-Reflection.
So, in the last episode, we talked about listening, which I would say is an art of listening. But also, when we consider listening, it's also important to listen to ourselves. And that brings us on to the great topic of self-reflection, because I think listening is just one element of that self-reflection, isn't it, David?
Absolutely. Again, I said before we actually come on to actually record it, I could talk about this for hours. And, very personal for me because, I don't think I've ever openly said it on the podcast, but I've gone through depression and experienced suicide. And when I came through that, self-reflection was a massive tool on me recovering. I needed to go back. I needed to understand how that had happened. And, I have self-reflected in other areas of my life consistently over the years and actually promoted to other people that, in their careers, that self-reflection is really good. And I think in my career, I've always tried to reflect, but certainly from a personal perspective, I wasn't reflecting on the harm that was coming to me around the traumas that I was experiencing. Yeah, I think, as we talk through this topic, when we talk about self-reflection, I think it's very important that people look at it from the point of view of, yes, you can reflect on your outer world, but, in order to do your best work in terms of, your relationships, your career, whatever it may be, you yourself need to be in a great place to do your best work. And that only comes from self-reflection.
It does, doesn't it? Because you've got to know yourself. But I think you've touched on an interesting point as well there around recognizing that you've done that for, say, perhaps your career, but finding it a bit more difficult to do that inner reflection.
Yeah.
And I think there are two sides of that, is that sometimes you do have to be in the right place to look at that. It needs to be the right time. I think we've got to be ready to look for those things, but I think we've not got to miss the clues for that and avoid it, because it could be tricky. So I think there is a sort of fine balance there that we need to find. And I think sometimes when there's more, I guess, turbulent emotions come up, I would say, it's just having the courage, isn't it, to recognize that those things are coming up and why is that coming up, and be if we can be curious about those things and witness them as if they were almost somebody else, that rather than pushing it away, would you, if you saw that vulnerability in somebody else, would you be more embracing and accepting of it and trying to support that other person? And it's like just bringing that back in and going, okay, right, yeah, I'm feeling that, so can I now bring that attention, that curiosity, and honor that process for myself, so that then it can be worked through and out.
Yeah, and I think, I'll plug something else that you've done. Debbie, one of the first things that when me and Debbie arranged our first one-to-one, I went off and, as you do, you stalk. And Debbie did a TEDx talk that you can actually find, I think, on your LinkedIn profile, I think it is.
It is, yeah.
It was around breathing, that we just need to take a time, pause and breathe. And I think that, around, in order to self-reflect, you need to take a pause and you need to breathe. And I think that we live in such a hectic world. And I always say quite a lot to people that if we're as hard on family, friends as we are on ourselves, we would have none, because we just tend to get into doing modes. We don't take that very important step going, no, let's just take a breath here, let's see where I'm at. And it's interesting because obviously, as you know, one of my previous roles was a learning and development manager, sales trainer, and I used to always say in a business context that after every interaction with a customer, the best salespeople will take a moment of reflection. They will relive that experience, because there will be things that you could have done better. And by you reflecting on them, you will be training your brain to respond differently in the future. So I gave this advice for maybe 3-4 years. what I never did is and I was the same. I would do that. I would reflect on a career basis. I used to say to people, give yourself a goal every day. Make a contract with yourself in the mirror every morning. What are you
Yeah.
going to achieve today? And it was always work related. It was never personal growth. It was always business growth. And then, of course, do your debrief when you brush your teeth at night in the mirror.
Mm.
And I used to say all of these things, but actually, when I came through the other side of my suicide, what I find really good from a self-reflection perspective is I actually now take 2 baths a week instead of showers.
Mm.
Because you think of a shower is quick, a shower is convenient, you're in, you're out. You go there basically to wash. That's what you're there to do. Whereas when you replace that with a bath, and you shut the door, you leave the world on the outside. Nobody wants anything from you for that 30 minutes. It's you, you bubbled, full Chandler Bing, get the bubbles out, get the wine on the side, do the colour. But nobody wants anything from you. And it just gives you that space to reflect. How am I? And that can be, personally, it can be professionally. And what I like to do is now this particular grid is in my mind, but I always talk to people about, there is a healthy state, there is a reacting state, there is an injured state, and then there's an unwell state. And whether it be and in terms of personal growth and your mindset, if you can spot that you're in a reacting state, then you should never really become injured. You can make the necessary changes to be better. And this could be sleep pattern. And what you can do there is you can look at things like sleep patterns. What my sleep patterns like? Are they healthy? Are they injured? What are they? My work, being a dad, whatever it may be, just have your little checkpoints and then just in your mind go, well, where am I? What would healthy look like? Am I there?
Yeah.
What would reacting look like? Am I there? And by just having that moment of self-reflection in certain areas of your life, you can then very quickly identify, actually, I'm just losing my way a little bit here. And I need to understand why is that and what is in my power to change that.
Yeah.
And I found that really useful for
me. I have a sort of umbrella phrase for that, which is notice what you notice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a phrase I've used for many years now, and it helps people to go, notice what I notice. Because sometimes if we notice the things and we just carry on, nothing changes. But if we can sort of just witness that and be in that notice what we notice, it gives us that pause, so that we can hold ourselves in that accountability, can't we, and find that curiosity. And I just want to pick something else up you said there around going back to my TED talk and how we are in this busy world. And from my own sort of research that I've done, what I've come to understand is that being busy can actually be a trauma response.
Yeah.
Because it prevents us from looking at ourselves.
Yeah.
So where that would have come from is because maybe something's happened that has been at the time potentially too painful to look at. So we busy ourselves to stop ourselves from having to look at that piece.
Yeah.
So it's just important to recognize, if we are in that busy mode, what are you in avoidance of?
Yeah.
Because honestly, it will be a cork that you're holding down that is going to force its way up, and it will want to be looked at some point. Yeah. So, use that energy instead to, if you can take those moments to pause, there's huge power in that pause. And I have another phrase of slow down to go faster.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because when we can get really clear on those things that are either holding us back, things that are moving us forward or whatever, because we've noticed what we've noticed, we can remove so much noise out of the way. And then we don't need to become as busy because we're far more strategic in the actions that we are taking. And we can be deliberate in our pauses, knowing that where's that pause going to help us. For me, there needs to be a balance between we need to reflect, but then we also need to put those things into action. So I call it intuition to action, so there has to be that flow. If we're just reflecting all the time, we're not going to get very far. But if we're just doing all the time, again, we're not going to get very far because we'll just burn out.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're going to reflect, I mean, you've got to give yourself a learning point. You've got to give yourself, a pathway to what it is that you should be aspiring to, whatever it could be. Like I say, in any facet of your life,
Yeah.
without that, vision, that pathway, the goal. What is it that I wish to gain from this? You've actually, one, you're not going to know if you've arrived there, and two, you're not going to be able to give yourself the gratitude that you deserve for actually making that change. And that's really, really important that people do that. But I think the interesting bit that you said there about being busy, and again, I'm just talking from my own personal perspective when I say this, but because of the traumas that I was experiencing, a lot of them are outside of work. Work was one area where actually I weren't having too much trauma, but because I became so engrossed in work had to be perfect in my life, because everything else was, I was out of kilter when I wasn't in work. Work was escapism. So by being busy at work, I'm avoiding what's going on in my mind. The problem with that was that, by trying to be perfect at something, that's very difficult to be around. And I know now, you self-reflect back, I know I must have been very, very difficult to work for, because I wanted perfection, and nobody's perfect. But if you've got a leader who's in that frame, and I didn't want to be in that frame, I was ill, and I'm very clear about that now. I was ill, but the impact that you have on other people at that point is really difficult. And again, tunnel vision. If you're not not only was I not reflecting on myself, I was probably not reflecting on the impact I was having on others either, because you're just in the
you're probably too busy to notice.
Absolutely, but the mind was too busy. The mind was too busy, and I was trying to, every day was a challenge to keep myself together, because I wasn't reflecting. It's easier to avoid. It really is. If you've got learning points in your life, the easiest thing to do is to avoid them or put them off for another day. That's the easy thing to do. To actually get in the trenches of your soul and go, right, I quite like that one, actually. I've just made that one up.
Yeah, we'll have that one.
I like that one, yeah. I'll take that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, the trenches, just get in there and to really battle through it and go, right, come on, we need to look at this, and we need to change, because this isn't serving you. It isn't serving the people around you. So it has no real benefit. We need to change it. That's hard. I've been there. But what I would say to anybody who's listening or watching this is that, let me tell you now, you can come through the other side. And when you do come through the other side, you are so much better as an individual. You can sense it in the relationships around you. People notice it. I went for a coffee with a former colleague only the other day. I walked into the room, I didn't even say anything, and the first word out of this person's mouth was, "Wow."
That's fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I went, "Wow, what?" And I went, "Let's get a coffee and I'll tell you." So got a coffee, sat down, started talking, and I'd known this person for 4 or 5 years. And they went, "I have never seen you. I've never seen this version of you, ever. And I like it." He said, "You was always, looking back now to today, you're having this conversation. I've never seen you so intent on a conversation, where I always, looking back, you were always somewhere else, or you were running at 100 miles an hour." He said, "It's so nice to see how calm you are."
Because you've got that internal presence.
Yeah.
And you've healed that wound. So you imagine, like, the avoidance. If we had broke our leg, would we go around ignoring that and being busy?
No.
The chances of that are just like zilch, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, but we all know that when we've healed a broken leg, how much better is it? And we've got that forward momentum, and we can move on, and it's no different from the internal wounds. So when we can have the bravery and the courage to heal those, then it just gives us that I don't know, a different aura, I guess, isn't it? Because
it's self-esteem, isn't it? It's, I think when you see personal growth through reflection, and I think it's important that you show yourself, like I said, like gratitude. You've got to check in on that. You've got to. It's a journey, and like anything else, when you attain, balance in your life, that is to be celebrated. That's as good as a promotion at work or whatever it is that, you know, these outward things, the new car or whatever that we actually, oh, well, that's a symbol of how I'm growing. No, the biggest growth is within you. And we've got to make sure that we're always respectful of that, mindful of that. And that's it. You know, for me now, every single day, I will, and my wife knows that I do this, I will always reflect on that day. I try, before I go to sleep every day, to show myself gratitude. How have I grown today as a human being? What have I achieved? It can be, and it can be little things. These don't have to be grand things. These can be just very little things that you just look back on and go, yeah, that was I made a positive impact on that person's life today. I read that book, and that book gave me a completely new concept that actually I found really interesting, and it's given me a different perspective. Whatever it may be, in every day of our life, we should always go to bed better than we woke up that morning. We should always be that as human beings. But in order to do that, you have to reflect at the end of the day on what you've achieved. So for me, morning self-reflection is, and those half an hours in the back, that's the big exercise of, right, what do I need to work on? And the reflection at night is, and how have I grown by doing this? What have I achieved? And let me tell you, you go to sleep a lot easier if you've shown yourself gratitude before you go to bed than still allowing things to whirl around your brain.
Absolutely. And I think, should we wrap that one up there? I think we could
go on for hours.
Yeah.
And you know, and we could go on for hours on this. And if, you know, if people find this interesting, clearly you can see the passion we've both got in terms of self-reflection. If you think this to be useful for you one-to-one, but equally if you think that, you know, your organization, your teams, you know, by self-reflecting could become greater, and believe me, they can, then reach out to us. You know, we'll be delighted to come and have a chat.
Fantastic.
Lovely. We'll see you again in episode 5.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Bye now.
Gratitude.
Join us next Monday for episode 5, Gratitude.